G-Man Boxing. Do you know what I mean? Every single live he donates. I see him on other lives donating. He's got the bag on it.
Alright, people, review of the week time. So we get into this. There might be some coughing in this video. I don't know why, I've just got a bit of a cough, so if I am coughing a bit, just ignore that. But we start, there's not that much really. This is kind of the time when, boxing tends to take a bit of a break. There doesn't tend to be much going on. And this may very well be the last review of the week we do until the new year. Because I doubt very much, well actually this day next week is Christmas Day. So I doubt very much I'll be recording. And I can't imagine there's going to be much news coming to light over the coming week. So it'll probably give me the chance to work on a few new things on here. Give me the chance to do a few lives as well. So we'll see. There'll be definitely content over Christmas. This is probably the last review of the week for the year. Maybe we'll do a review of the year. Who knows? We won't do it next week, but we'll do it probably before the end of the year anyway. So stay tuned for that. But obviously we got to talk about the two cards that went on last night. There was obviously one in the States and there was one on in the UK. We'll start with the boxer card that happened last night. Now, I wasn't feeling the best yesterday, so I didn't feel like doing any reviews of the fights, but we'll talk through I saw most of them. Now this one right here, I had to laugh at this one. Somehow, because I suppose I say somehow, Steve Robinson fought Nick Campbell. And people, you could say this is why heavyweight boxing is fun, because you had two big guys swinging leather, and Nick Campbell just ended up getting clipped. Stoppage was a bit premature, I felt, to be fair, was a bit premature. I think the stoppage happened in the 4th round. But I mean, both these guys look absolutely awful. They look awful. I think Fraser Clark is fighting on the Eubank Smith undercard. I think saw somewhere that he was fighting Kevin Johnson. Kevin Johnson at this stage, well, even years ago, we know what we're going to get with Kevin Johnson. He's a spoiler. He comes to survive. But even now, I don't think he even has the survival skills anymore. So he'll get through him. But they were on about him maybe taking on the winner of this. To be honest with you, he fought Kamil Sokolowski in his last fight. I see either one of these guys as being a step down from the Kamil Sokolowskis of the world. These guys were terrible. Terrible. Absolutely. I don't understand the whole Steve Robinson thing. I really don't understand it, because Sky have been, I don't want to say pushing him, but they've had a lot of faith in him, and I really don't see why. He looks awful. Absolutely awful. Nicky Campbell, yeah, he's a Scottish heavyweight, looks absolutely garbage too. But it was a fun little scrap. Both guys were just swinging leather. Nicky Campbell ended up getting clipped. He was dropped twice in the 4th round, and then he was stopped standing on his feet. Bit premature. The bell literally was about to go, and he was more hurt from the 2 knockdowns than the combination that made the referee stop it, but the referee chose to stop it. Now, Dan Aziz took on Rocky Fielding. Now, this was an interesting one. So I've been looking at Dan Aziz over the last year, and every time I watch him, I'm more impressed with him. When he went in there against Jose Burton, I thought he would win. But the manner in which he did, that surprised me. That really surprised me, because I was like, okay, he's improved immensely. I expected him to win. But to have a few little issues, mainly with Jose Burton's height, and just get to a decision, not to beat him up the way he did. Well, he was in there at Rocky Fielding. Since he got beaten by Canelo about this time 4 years ago, I think he had a fight at the end of 2019, and I don't think he's had any fights since then, or if he has, he's had very few. Yeah, he had one fight in April just gone, and he had one fight last year in November. So he's had 3 fights since 2018, and against very low level, 26-6, 32-6, 30-17. So not a particularly good level. Fielding was probably just a little bit above British level, because obviously he got ironed out by Callum Smith in the round. But everyone else, and the super middleweight division at domestic level, a couple of years ago, like 16-17, it wasn't great. So he was able to beat the guys like David Brophy. He got a lucky, but he got a very, very razor close win. I think that was over John Ryder, wasn't it? I think he just edged John Ryder. Yeah, he did. Split decision in 2017. So he was able to just get a little bit above British level. That's kind of where Rocky Fielding ended. Whereas now, like in that fight, he missed weight. He looked very fleshy in the ring at light heavyweight. And this is a guy coming up again from super middle. So Fielding just looked like he had nothing left. He really did do a good human heavy bag impersonation. That's the best way you can describe it. He was taking a sustained beating for, I think it was 7-8 rounds, I think it was, wasn't it? Yeah, it was 8 rounds. So he didn't really do anything. He got dropped at the end of the 7th, and then corner through with the towel midway through the 8th. He was not really doing anything. So this is for the British title, light heavy. It was also for the Commonwealth title. So Dan Aziz picks that up. He did what he needed to do. Now, obviously, Fielding, he's been stopped in a round by Callum Smith. Smith's a much bigger puncher than Dan Aziz. He's been stopped in 3 rounds. He was up down every round against Canelo. Again, Canelo, much more talented than Dan Aziz. Probably hits harder too. But Dan Aziz he's relentless. That's the best way. He's on you like a bad smell. And he's not letting up. He's not the biggest puncher in the world, I don't think. But he just chops away at you and grinds you down. He's got a very good engine. But the one thing I worry about with Dan Aziz, he's 33 years old. Like, look here. Yeah, 33 years old. It is a bit of a worry. Now, saying that, I do think that he's above domestic level. I think he is. But how far remains to be seen. Him against Buatsi, who would I pick at this stage? I probably would just favour Buatsi. But I'd like to see him against someone like Craig Richards in the new year. I would. I don't know if we get that fight, but I think that would be a really, really interesting fight. It'd be a really good way to see where he is in terms of his progression. Or maybe even a Ricards Bolotniks. Because I think Ricards Bolotniks is just kind of maybe below European level or in around that. So if we see Dan Aziz in fights like that in the new year, because they're going to have to speed it up with him at the end of the day. It's not like he's 29 and you have a couple more years to work with him, have him defend the British title a few more times. You're going to have to get a move on with him. If you see something in him, and there is something there with Dan Aziz, we need to get a move on. He's 33 years old. And at the top of the bill, Chris Billum Smith, Armand, I can't even pronounce that name. No, I'm not even going to try. Now, this was interesting in the first few rounds because Billum Smith actually got rocked a bit in the second round. It was a right hand that landed, and you could see his legs did stiffen. He did do a little wobble. Billum Smith's never been defensively savvy. He's never been amazing when it comes to defense. He is there to be hit. I think that Billum Smith, he needs to be very careful. There was talk of him after this fight. People were saying, how would he fare against? Oh, I'm going to say it wrong. Yapma? Is that how you say it? I think he'll get ironed out against him. I really do. I think he'll get ironed out against him. I wonder what Sky look to do the rematch with Riakporhe. Now, I do think they're looking to go down the world title route with Riakporhe. I think their plan is Okolie versus Riakporhe in 2023 if they can't get unifications over the line. I think that's what Sky are looking at. But Billum Smith, what's he going to do? I don't know. This fight was ended devastatingly in the 5th round. Probably a highlight reel knockout, but probably a contender for one of the knockouts of the year was Billum Smith with the uppercut in this fight. Absolutely fantastic shot. Really, really was. So that was the card that was on in the UK. Now, in the US, I only saw the main event, which was Michael Rivera versus Frank Martin. And I thought Frank Martin boxed out of his skin. He looked tremendous in there. Was really, really impressed with what I saw from him. I think that with Martin and being under Derrick James, I think that Derrick James again and again and again is showing how good a trainer he is. I really do. I think he's shown just how good a trainer he is. And that stable of fighters, it's coming together. It's coming together. In terms of Derrick James, because that's kind of the fight's done for the weekend. In terms of Derrick James, obviously, he's training with Anthony Joshua now at the minute. So AJ out training with Derrick James. And I think that Derrick James is one of those trainers where he just seems to be getting better and better. His stable seems to be growing. His fighters are doing great things in there. And I just feel, just for me, I'd love to see AJ settle with one trainer, settle over in the States with one trainer, and see how that goes, because I really do think that his plan that he's coming up with, look, I can understand maybe going to a gym, to this gym, to this gym, to this gym, just to see who you click with, just to see who, okay, this fighter, I feel like me and him could gel well as a team. I feel that his style suits me and my style suits him. So, that's okay. But I want to see how I fit with this trainer. I can understand that. But if you're essentially going to be doing what he's talking about doing, which is, I'm going to work with you, and I'm going to work with you, and I'm going to work with you for fight camps, I just don't see that working. I think he needs to base himself in the UK with one specific trainer. And I would go with Derrick James. I'd take a risk and just say, right, let's do it. Derrick James, Anthony Joshua, let's see how it goes. He'd be in there with Spence, he'd be in there with Frank Martin, he'd be in there with Charlo. And they all seem to, well, I'm pretty sure they've all seemed to be, okay with AJ. I know they're all PBC guys, and PBC guys can be a bit out there, but I think that environment would do well. AJ would do well in it. I do. I think he needs to get out of his comfort zone, get out of Sheffield, just go, how would I say it? Not go into the lion's den per se, but just get out of the comfort zone and just see how that works. At the end of the day, this comeback is going to be, I don't know how it's going to be in terms of the process, but I would imagine they're going to do it slowly. So probably a Dylan White fight, maybe a Valine fight, and then maybe a big fight at the end of the year. That I could understand, and I think that might, I would probably have 2 easy fights and then Valine, but I reckon they're going to do White, Valine, and then a bigger fight like maybe a Deontay Wilder or someone like that, or Filip Hrgovic, who knows. But I'd feel more confident with AJ if he had a solid trainer, solid camp, wasn't deviating, going for this trainer in one camp and then this trainer to another fight camp, etc. Just stick with it for the one, and I think he'll be okay. That's not to say AJ is going to, hit his peak necessarily. I think that AJ may have already peaked, which is a shame. I think he may have peaked with, and when I say peaked, I think at this stage now it might be a case of he's not going to get any better because he's just getting older. I think if he had gone to a different trainer, say in 2016, 2017, different story. I think he wasted too much time with Rob McCracken over there in Sheffield, but it's done now. So that's my thoughts on Derrick James and this whole Anthony Joshua situation. Lawrence Okolie, I've got a new deal that I presented. This is on the Matchroom side. I said, Matchroom, you don't even need to match these numbers, just get close and I'll stay with you. They said, absolutely not. If you want to take the new deal, you're going to have to pay my company 500 grand. Our contract comes to an end and you either pay me or move on. Eddie Hearn, of all people, should really understand. He was with Sky for years. He had amazing shows, built up a host of fighters. Then a £1 billion check came and off Eddie ran to the zone. So, yeah, you see, Okolie is... I can understand it to an extent where the bitterness is coming from, because I watched that interview and he was sounding bitter. And Eddie Hearn, basically, he obviously gave his side of it. He said, a lot of what Lawrence said is not correct. We never asked for 500 grand. He has a fight left with us. He claims the extra fight was signed off by his team and not him, but he accepted all the terms and never mentioned it. So, again, this whole Lawrence Okolie, Eddie Hearn situation, I don't know what way it's going to go. I really don't. I would imagine that Lawrence Okolie is probably... He's got this purse bid coming up, I think, soon. And I think it's been pushed back, but I think it's coming up soon. And I guess maybe in his mind, he's just like, just let Eddie Hearn bid for it. Just let him bid for it. Let me get this fight out of the way. And then we're over and done with. In terms of this whole situation, I genuinely think that if Okolie had have maybe just kept this between him and the lawyers and the Matchroom's end of it, it might have already been resolved. I think when you go and start saying things, like he did on Twitter and stuff like that, I know he's deleted them, but like, people take screenshots. We know it was said. We know it was there. When stuff like that starts getting said, it's going to upset the people involved. And you could take a situation that maybe is not the ideal situation, but if you just leave it, let it go through the normal step-by-step process, you probably come out the other end in no time. Now that you've done this, it's just, they're just going to drag their heels. That's how I think it's going to be. So we'll wait and see in the new year what happens with this whole Lawrence Okolie situation. Wait and see what happens with regards to this purse bid with David Light. And hopefully in the new year we get to see Okolie back in the ring, because he'd be out of the ring. I can't imagine he'll be back in the ring come February, probably March or April. So we could be seeing a situation where he's out of the ring for over a year, and he's a big boy when it comes to making cruiser. So the longer he leaves it and the inactivity, I think the harder it's going to be for him to get back down to that weight. So we could see Okolie going up to heavyweight next year sooner rather than later. I think with Okolie at heavyweight, a lot of people say, like, gee, he'll be fine at heavyweight. I don't think so. I think he's really going to struggle at heavyweight. I really do. I think that Lawrence Okolie, when you look at him fight, he has a lot of good attributes. He's a big puncher. He's very long. He's very gangly. He uses his jab to good effect. He's got a massive right hand. Shane McGuigan has really done wonders with Lawrence Okolie to use that. He's also very physical. He's one of the most physically strong cruiserweights you'll ever see. But at heavyweight, you're going to have guys who are going to be 6'5", who are going to have maybe not as long a reach, but you're not going to have massive advantages like you did against Krzysztof Glowacki. And against Cieslak, you were able to shut him down and, use your strength. At heavyweight, you could go in there, say Lawrence Okolie goes into the ring at 230. I'm not saying these are going to fight, but hypothetically, could you imagine a Joe Joyce, nearly 270, solid? He would ragdoll Lawrence Okolie in a clinch. There's a lot of heavyweights who could ragdoll him in a clinch. And I think that he is even Daniel Dubois, I think, would ragdoll Okolie if it was up close, because Daniel Dubois is a massive, massive man. Massively strong. So if he's up at heavyweight next year, I wonder how he's going to fare. Eddie Hearn also stated that he believes Tyson Fury will be pound for pound number one if he beats Lawrence Okolie, if he beats Oleksandr Usyk. Right, that's interesting. Eddie Hearn feels that he beat Usyk pound for pound number one. I suppose most people would have Usyk as the pound for pound best in the world now. I don't really like pound for pound, but I wouldn't really argue with anyone who did. Savannah Marshall was actually on Soccer AM yesterday, and she declared that she's now activated her rematch clause for the Clarissa Shields rematch. I've activated the rematch clause. Sky and Boxer are keen to have the rematch next summer at St. James's Park. Interesting. See, I don't think Savannah Marshall can really do much else. I was surprised so many people had that fight as close as they did, because Savannah Marshall had moments in the fight, but really Clarissa Shields' speed was the difference. I don't really think there's anything she can do different in this fight, to be honest with you. Haven't seen it the first time. You never know, but I would have... You see, when you're in a razor close fight, and you've had your moments of success, when you look at a rematch, you think, oh, how could this go? When it's a fight that, yeah, she had moments in there, but for the most part, it was Clarissa Shields doing what she was doing. You just look at it and you just think, well, how can really you do different in a rematch? I understand maybe there's nowhere else to go. It's a bit like the Kambosos-Haney situation. In the first fight, Haney just dominated. And then George Kambosos activated the rematch. And I was kind of scratching my head, be like, why? You were completely outboxed. But I guess at the end of the day, you have to look at it like, well, he wasn't knocked out or anything. Like, they just got outboxed. It's a money fight. And what else? Where else is he going to go? So I can maybe see the same for Savannah Marshall. We'll wait and see the build-up to that fight. It'd be funny. Ryan Garcia has now rejected the chance to have a tune-up fight in January. He will instead go straight into a fight with Tank Davis in April, provided Tank Davis beats Hector Luis Garcia. Okay, interesting, because there was talk that he was meant to be out the end of January. So, no Ryan Garcia. Well, January is still shaping up to be a pretty good month. Either way, it's still shaping up to be a very, very interesting month. Conor Benn's legal team have reportedly now submitted a 270-page document to the WBC to try and clear his name in their investigation into this positive drug test. Mauricio Sullivan has revealed separate UCAD investigation also ongoing. Now, I think the UCAD one is the one, the WBC one, that to me is just, I don't really understand why it's getting so much attention, because the UCAD one is the crucial one. At the end of the day, you can be banned by the WBC, but that doesn't mean you can't fight. I mean, look at Alexander Povetkin. So he got banned by the WBC. I think it was January 2017. He had 2 fights in 2017. You're just banned from their rankings. They won't sanction your fight. But I think one of those fights Povetkin had in 2017 while he was banned, I think it might have had a WBO and a WBA little tricky title on the line. So they were happy to say, all right, banned with WBC. Well, you're not banned with us. Here you go. Have an international or whatever the hell they're called. You know those little tricky titles. So for Conor Benn, that probably just is it's not really anything if he gets banned by the WBC. Oleksandr Usyk on Instagram today, I'm coming. Derrick, I'm coming for you. Derrick. I remember those. They were funny. Or what was he? He was, Anthony, where are you? Yeah, no. It's going to be interesting. I really hope that we get a chance to see Oleksandr Usyk versus Tyson Fury in 2023. That's the fight I want to see. You know, probably the fight I most want to see just for entertainment purpose would probably be Spence versus Crawford. But as many of you know, my favourite division of boxing is heavyweight. Heavyweight division has always been my favourite division. I love the heavyweight division, and I just want to see an undisputed heavyweight champion. I really want to see one. I want to see one more than most things in boxing. And commercially, would I say that Fury versus Usyk is a bigger fight than Joshua Wilder? Even now, I would genuinely hand on my heart say no. I think that Wilder versus Joshua is a bigger fight. I think it would definitely get the casuals more involved. I think that both guys, it would just be so dramatic. You'd be just waiting for a shot to land from both guys. I think that is probably the fight commercially in the heavyweight division, even though there's no title, is the biggest. But this is the biggest in terms of what it has on the line. And I want to see undisputed. I'll always say it. My priority, undisputed. Across the board, you know. I'm not someone who's going to turn around and say, oh yeah, well we have undisputed, you know, at 100 and whatever it was, 40 pounds with Josh Taylor. But I knew he could fight better guys than Paul Butler. And yeah, he could have fought better guys than Paul Butler at 118 pounds. But at the end of the day, we want to see undisputed. Because that's the box ticked. You know, you've done it. You've won all the titles. You've done it. And, you know, many of the great fighters have been undisputed in the 4-belt era. Many of them. You know, the 4-belt era, was it Jermaine Taylor was the last 4-belt champion? And it was over a decade. Terence Crawford before we got another one. So we don't see many of them. Certainly not now in the 4-belt era. So it's nice when we do. It's nice that it's happening a lot more now. And I want to see it in the Premier division. I want to see it in the heavyweight division. We've never had a 4-belt champion. It has been, 20 odd years, 23 years since Lennox Lewis beat Evander Holyfield. It was November 1999, so just over 23 years now. In 2023, I want to see undisputed heavyweight. I really do. I want to see it. I know Oleksandr Usyk has these mandatories coming, and it is strange when you look at it because, you know, they order the way the mandatories get ordered with some sanctioning bodies. I just don't get it because they're so quick to order some for some fighters, but other fighters they're just like, it's okay. At the end of the day, right? Errol Spence hasn't made a mandatory defense of his IBF title in 4 years. It'll be 5 years next year. So he last made a mandatory defense, I think it was July 2018, and he has not had a mandatory even called since then. Now that is crazy when you think about it, and the IBF for ordering mandatories like that for Oleksandr Usyk. It is crazy when you think about it. Now I hope to God they see the light and they just say, right, you know, WBA as well, WBO, undisputed takes priority. Let's get this over the line, and whatever happens, happens. You know, I would imagine after the undisputed fight, whoever comes out as champion, they won't be undisputed for long. But I hope to God we can see that. Errol Spence has said that his next fight is now likely to be April, May, or June, following his most recent car crash. Yeah, Errol Spence, there was talk about him fighting Keith Thurman early next year. Well, it looks like if he is going to fight, I'm hoping it's just going to be Terence Crawford straight into it, but April, May, or June, so it's going to be a while. It's not going to be early 2023. Errol Spence apparently injured his think it was his leg or something, he got injured, and another car crash. Now this one apparently was just kind of wrong place, wrong time. Not his fault, but still, very unlucky with the car crashes. He added about Terence Crawford. Hopefully I can spin that block and go back to negotiations. It's a fight I really want, so hopefully we can make it happen next year. I hope so too. You know, I really do. That's what I want. That's the fight in terms of just sheer entertainment. That's the fight I want to see next year. Because A, it's undisputed, and B, I think that these guys are the cream of the crop in their division. They are the best. And I think that they won't give us a boring fight, put it like that. It's going to be a very good fight. And I can see how both guys can offset each other. I can see how both guys can have success. And, you know, I just think it's going to be a fantastic fight. I really do. I want to see Errol Spence versus Terence Crawford. That's really the fight I want to see. I really want to see that, you know. Obviously, the main priority is we get undisputed as much as we can. The fight I want to see the most, Crawford-Spence, Fury Usyk, and then this. It's kind of sad because both promoters don't seem to want to talk about this fight, which is an undisputed fight as well, and it's a great fight, which would be Beterbiev versus Bivol. Now, assuming Beterbiev gets past Yard, and I don't believe Bivol has a fight lined up, but I'd love to see them go at it next year. But Bob Arum's not really mentioned the Bivol fight. Eddie Hearn's not mentioned the Beterbiev fight for Bivol. So it seems like even to the promoters, they're not massively keen on that fight on either end. Maybe they feel as though commercially it just... And I can probably maybe see where they're coming from to an extent, because for Eddie Hearn, I'm sure, he probably looks and thinks, Canelo Bivol, commercially, much better than Bivol versus Beterbiev. And I'm sure that Bob Arum was probably looking at Beterbiev and thinking, you know, hold out and wait and see what happens with Canelo, and I'd rather stick you in with Canelo and get money than have you go in there with Bivol and not make any money, have to pay you both crazy money. Maybe that's what they're both looking at, I don't know, but that's the fight I really want to see next year. But that's one fight I think, sadly, the more I think about it, the more I think it's probably not going to happen. And we're probably going to see both guys going different ways, which is a shame. Because I think that fight is just going to be, you know, it's just going to be lit. It's just going to be crazy. It would just be a spectacle, I'll put it to you like that. So I think that's pretty much it for this week's review. There's not been much happening, as I said, so I'll end it there. In terms of World Cup news, because I got to get that in there, because the World Cup obviously final happened today. Probably the best game I've ever seen live. That was tremendous. Argentina versus France. It was just... Argentina were the better side, but they made that game so much harder than it needed to be. They gave away 2 penalties, for God's sakes, and a handball that just didn't need to happen, because I think that shot wasn't gonna go in anyway. And, you know, Mbappe with a hat-trick. Messi, possibly his last game for Argentina, although I think he'll probably do the Copa America in 2 years. I reckon he might just do one last Copa America and then call it a day. He'd be 30, or is it 2 years or 3 years? Copa America, I'm not sure, it might actually be 3 years now. But look, I thought it was just a great game. But Argentina made it harder than they needed it to be. You know, they were the better side. They just fell apart after France got that penalty. They just fell apart. 2 goals in what was it, less than 2, or a little over a minute? A little over 2 minutes or something like that. Crazy. But a great final. What a game. What a game. Delighted to see Messi finally get that crown. World champion. He's literally done it all, hasn't he? La Liga, Champions League, French League, Copa del Reyes, Copa America, now World Cup. I mean, that's a resume. That's a resume that you'd be playing like FIFA online, or, you know, create a player and stuff like that, and you'd be thinking to do that in a video game. To do it as a player, what a guy, what a guy. But that's my thoughts on that. I had to throw that in there because it was just the tournament itself was brilliant. I thought I've been watching football. It's not my main sport, but I do watch it. And this is the best tournament I can remember watching. It was just amazing. I think that a lot of it had to do with the fact it was mid-season and not in the summer. Because I think a lot of the time when and I'm going off on one about football here, but just trust me. A a lot of the times when you have the tournaments in the summer, the players are tired. It's at the end of a season. They're playing a bit more defensive. They just don't have the legs on them. And I think that's why the tournaments in the summer, you got a lot of good ones, but they wouldn't be as good. This was just brilliant. I mean, this was just mayhem from start to finish in terms of great games. There wasn't many boring games at this tournament, I'll tell you that. And the final was just brilliant. I mean, that final will live long in the memory. I'll put it like that. I will put it like that. It will live long, long in the memory. Great final. I'll leave it at that, people. Possibly the last review of the week for the year. If it is, hope you've enjoyed it. We've had a very, very good year. Tremendous year on the channel this year. But we've got plenty more to come. And I got a few lives planned this week as well. So we'll chat to you then. Smash the like button, people, if you could. And subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. I'll talk to you, people. Peace.